You awaken to the gentle sound of sandals slapping against cobblestones and the not-so-gentle aroma of goat. The sun is already high because alarm clocks haven't been invented yet, and your bed is a slab of a stone with a straw pillow that smells faintly of olives and regret. Your first thought, where's my phone? Your second thought, why is everyone yelling in perfect iambic pentameter? Welcome to Athens, 430 BCE. You're about to have the worst day of your life. The morning routine, if you can call it that. There's no snooze button here. Just a neighbor named Cleon, who is already halfway through a passionate speech about civic virtue while brushing his teeth with crushed oyster shells. You try to sit up, but your tunic is tangled around your legs like a passive-aggressive snake. You're not sure how you got here, but you suspect time travel and poor decision-making. Outside, the streets are alive with the sounds of commerce, philosophy, and mild public nudity. A man walks by holding a basket of figs and shouting about metaphysics. A child throws a pebble at a statue and is immediately sentenced to 30 minutes of Socratic questioning. You step outside and immediately regret it. The sun is blinding. Your sandals are 2 sizes too small, and someone offers you a breakfast of barley porridge and boiled onions. You accept because you're starving and confused. It tastes like sadness. Your first existential crisis. Before breakfast, you sit on a low stone wall, trying to make sense of your surroundings. A group of philosophers gathers nearby, debating whether reality is an illusion or just poorly constructed. One of them, possibly Plato, possibly a man named Gary, asks you what justice means. You say, not being here. They nod solemnly and invite you to join their symposium later. You decline, mostly because you don't know what a symposium is, and you suspect it involves more porridge. The local vibe, dusty, democratic, and slightly damp Athens is bustling. There are no cars, no Wi-Fi, and no personal space. Everyone's either arguing, sculpting, or preparing for war. You pass a man carving a statue of Zeus with alarming detail, and a woman selling fish that smells like it is already halfway to Hades. You try to ask for directions, but the locals respond in riddles and references to Homer. One man tells you, the path to truth lies through the agora. You ask if that's near a Starbucks. He weeps. Nap attempt number 1 failed. You return to your stone slab, hoping to sleep off the confusion, but the walls are thin, and your neighbor is now practicing his courtroom speech about why his cousin should be exiled for stealing a goat. You try stuffing straw in your ears. It only makes things worse. You lie back, staring at the ceiling, which is made of reeds and disappointment. You wonder how long you'll last here. You wonder if anyone has invented deodorant yet. You wonder if the Oracle of Delphi offers refunds. And that, dear listener, is just the first hour of your day in ancient Greece. You haven't even hit the gymnasium yet. Spoiler, everyone's naked. Or try to vote using pebbles while dodging philosophical guilt trips. So, if you're enjoying this slow descent into historical discomfort, don't forget to like, subscribe, and offer a small goat to the algorithm. It's the only way to survive the next chapter. You step outside, blinking against the blinding Athenian sun, which seems personally offended by your modern sleep schedule. The air is thick with dust, ambition, and the unmistakable scent of olives. Everywhere. Olives in baskets, olives in oil, olives in philosophical metaphors. You begin to suspect that if you sneeze too hard, an olive tree might sprout from your nostril. The streets are alive, And unfortunately, so are the citizens. Everyone's already mid-argument, mid-commerce, or mid-goat herding. You pass a man yelling about the soul's immortality while simultaneously haggling over the price of fermented fish. You're not sure which conversation is more disturbing. The agora, marketplace of madness. You wander into the agora, the bustling heart of Athens. It's part flea market, part TED Talk, and part accidental therapy session. Merchants shout about figs, amphorae, and questionable ointments. Philosophers shout about truth, virtue, and whether chairs exist. You try to buy a loaf of bread. The baker asks you to define justice first. You say, "It's when I get bread," without a pop quiz. He nods solemnly and hands you a stale crust. A man in a tunic offers to sell you a scroll that reveals the secrets of the cosmos. You ask if it includes a map to the nearest bathroom. He weeps. Existential crisis. Number 2. Sponsored by Pythagoras, you sit on a stone bench, hoping to rest. Instead, you're joined by a group of thinkers who immediately begin dissecting your posture, your aura, and your views on the transmigration of souls. One of them, possibly Pythagoras, possibly a man named Kevin, asks if you believe numbers are the true nature of reality. You say, "I believe I'm hungry." They applaud your humility and invite you to a symposium. You decline again, mostly because you still done to know what a symposium is, and you suspect it involves more porridge and fewer exits. Goat interlude. A goat wanders by. No one reacts. You ask if it's normal. A woman shrugs and says, "That's Dionysus." You're not sure if she means the goat or the vibe. You pet the goat. It bites you. You feel spiritually awakened. You try to shop. You accidentally join a cult. You spot a stall selling tunics. You need one, because yours smells like regret and barley. The merchant offers you a discount if you agree to worship Apollo every third Tuesday. You nod, mostly to get the tunic. He hands you a pamphlet and a ceremonial flute. You walk away with new clothes and a vague sense of religious obligation. You're not sure what just happened, but you suspect you're now part of a mystery religion. You hope it includes snacks. You've survived breakfast. Barely. You've dodged philosophers, offended porridge, and accidentally joined a cult. Now it is time to face one of ancient Greece. Its most confusing challenges. Getting dressed. You stare at your tunic. It's wrinkled, vaguely damp, and smells like someone whispered "goat" into a pile of laundry. You try to put it on. It immediately betrays you. Fashion, but make it existential. There are no zippers, no buttons, just a rectangle of cloth and a dream. You wrap it around yourself like a burrito of insecurity. It slips off one shoulder. You adjust. It slips off the other. You try to tie it with a belt made of rope. The rope snaps. You're now dressed like a confused curtain. You step outside, hoping no one notices. Everyone notices. A man walks by in a perfectly draped chiton, his folds cascading like a marble statue. He glances at your tunic and raises one eyebrow. You feel judged. You feel exposed. You feel like a fashion crime, the style icons of the polis. You pass a group of citizens discussing the latest trends in toga drapery. One insists that asymmetry is the future. Another claims that wearing sandals with socks is a sign of divine punishment. A third just keeps shouting, "Linen is life," while waving a bolt of fabric like a battle flag. You ask if there's a tailor nearby. They laugh. One points to a goat wearing a tunic better than yours. You weep. Philosophical wardrobe malfunctions. You try to blend in. You stand near a statue and pretend to be part of the scenery. A philosopher approaches and begins discussing the symbolic meaning of your outfit. This tunic, he says, represents the chaos of the soul, the unraveling of identity, the fragile nature of form. You say, it's just inside out. He nods solemnly and invites you to a symposium. You decline. Again, you attempt a wardrobe upgrade. You find a stall selling garments. The merchant offers you a limited edition toga made from imported Egyptian linen. It costs 3 amphorae of olive oil and a promise to never speak ill of Athena. You agree. You're desperate. You try it on. It fits. It flows. It smells faintly of incense and ambition. You feel powerful. You feel elegant. You trip over the hem and fall into a basket of figs. The merchant sighs and hands you a scroll titled How to Walk in a Toga Without Embarrassing Your Ancestors. You thank him. You don't read it. You're hungry. Not, I skipped lunch hungry. More like, I've been emotionally drained by metaphysics and goat bites. Hungry. You wander toward what looks like a breakfast stall, hoping for something comforting, maybe even familiar. Instead, you're handed a bowl of barley porridge. It's gray. It jiggles. It smells like someone whispered, nutrition, into a pile of damp sand. You take a bite. It tastes like obligation. Breakfast, but make it existential. You sit on a low stone bench, trying to eat without making eye contact with the man beside you, who's chewing his porridge while reciting fragments of Heraclitus. He pauses mid-bite to ask, do you believe the soul is like a river? You say, I believe this porridge is trying to kill me. He nods solemnly and offers you a fig. You decline. You're not ready for fruit-based philosophy. Across the square, a group of thinkers is deep in debate. One man insists that reality is an illusion. Another counters that reality is a goat. A third just keeps shouting, eudaimonia, like it's a spell from Harry Potter. You try to focus on your porridge. It stares back. Passive-aggressive Plato, a man in a slightly cleaner tunic, approaches. He introduces himself as Plato. You are not sure if it's the Plato or just a guy who really into caves. Either way, he sits beside you and begins explaining the theory of forms, using your breakfast as a metaphor. This porridge, he says, is but a shadow of the true porridge, perfect, eternal, and untouched by spoons. You nod politely while trying to scrape the gray goo off your tunic. He continues, undeterred. In the realm of ideals, porridge is warm, nourishing, and never makes you question your life choices. You ask if the ideal porridge comes with cinnamon. He frowns. You've offended him. You've offended porridge. You try to leave. You're philosophically trapped. You stand up, hoping to escape the breakfast symposium. But Plato follows. So does Heraclitus guy. And now a third man joins, holding a scroll and a suspiciously large onion. They begin debating whether onions have souls. You try to walk faster. They match your pace. You break into a jog. They jog too. Scrolls flapping, sandals slapping, shouting about virtue and legumes. You duck into a pottery stall. The potter offers you a vase and a lecture on aesthetics. You buy the vase just to make him stop. It's shaped like a goat. You're not sure why. You step into the agora, ancient Greece's bustling marketplace and political hotspot. It smells like ambition, olives, and someone's questionable attempt at perfume. You're here to shop, observe democracy, and maybe, just maybe, avoid being sold a goat. Retail therapy, circa 400 BCE. Stalls line the square, each more chaotic than the last. One offers authentic Spartan sandals made from recycled scrolls. Another sells philosopher-approved figs that allegedly improve your dialectic skills. You buy two. You regret it immediately. A merchant waves you over and insists you need a new toga. You explain you just bought one. He gasps, "That toga is last season." You cry softly into your grapes. Democracy, but make it loud. In the center of the agora, citizens gather to debate. Topics include taxes, war, and whether olives should be considered a vegetable or a lifestyle. You try to follow the conversation, but it's mostly shouting and dramatic gesturing. A man named Euphronius climbs onto a crate and declares, "We must reform the drainage system." The crowd cheers. Someone throws a cabbage. You're not sure if that's support or protest. Philosophers selling out. You pass a booth where Socratic dialogue is being sold, like hotcakes. Buy one question, get two existential crises free, shouts a man in a tunic. You ask what the meaning of life is. He hands you a pamphlet and a coupon for discounted hemlock. You move on. The goat incident. You admire a vase. The merchant says it's blessed by Athena herself. You ask for proof. He gestures to a goat wearing a laurel wreath. You're skeptical. The goat sneezes. You buy the vase. You've bathed, been oiled, and vaguely threatened by a goat. Now you're invited to a symposium, a formal dinner party where the wine flows, the logic wobbles, and someone always ends up passionately defending the virtue of spoons. Arrival. Bring a toga and a tolerance for tangents. You enter the host's villa. It's dimly lit, smells like roasted lamb and ambition, and features a harpist who's clearly improvising. You're handed a goblet of wine and a cushion. You sit. The cushion is suspiciously damp. You pretend not to notice. A man named Callimachus greets you with a toast to wisdom, wine, and the occasional well-placed insult. Everyone cheers. You sip. You regret it. It tastes like grapes and unresolved trauma. The debate begins. The topic tonight: what is love? You brace yourself. One guest insists love is divine madness. Another claims it's a form of cosmic balance. A third says it's mostly just yelling and olives. You offer a timid opinion. Love is warm? They nod solemnly. Someone weeps. The wine hits. As the amphorae empty, the logic begins to unravel. A philosopher passionately argues that chairs are sentient. Another insists that shadows have feelings. Someone tries to seduce a statue. The statue is unimpressed. You quietly eat grapes and pretend to understand metaphysics. The toasts get weird. Each guest stands to deliver a toast. One recites a poem about socks. Another sings a ballad to his pet goose. You're pressured to contribute. You panic. You raise your goblet and say, "To sandals that don't betray us." The room erupts in applause. You're now considered a minor genius. You arrive at the amphitheater, carved into a hillside like a dramatic wedge of cheese. The crowd is buzzing. The air smells like roasted chickpeas and anticipation. You're here to witness the pinnacle of Greek culture. Live theater, where emotions run high and plot twists run wild. The stage is set poorly. The backdrop is painted to resemble a temple, but someone clearly ran out of paint halfway through. A tree is represented by a broom with leaves glued on. You admire the effort. You lower your expectations. A chorus enters, all wearing identical masks and chanting in unison. You're not sure what they're saying, but it sounds important and vaguely accusatory. You feel guilty. You don't know why. Tragedy strikes, repeatedly. The play begins. A noble hero discovers his fate, curses the gods, and dramatically collapses. He gets up. He collapses again. You suspect he enjoys collapsing. His wife enters, weeping. His best friend enters, also weeping. A messenger arrives to announce bad news. He weeps. The chorus weeps. You begin to suspect the entire plot is just an elaborate excuse to cry in public. Comic relief. Sort of. Suddenly, a jester appears. He's wearing a tunic made of turnips and speaks only in riddles. The audience laughs. You're confused. He juggles olives. One hits a priest. The priest weeps. The jester delivers a monologue about the futility of ambition, then falls into a barrel. The crowd cheers. You clap politely and wonder if this is symbolic or just slippery flooring. Audience participation, uninvited. A man behind you loudly critiques the acting. Another insists the hero's sandals are historically inaccurate. A third begins reciting his own play. You move seats. Someone hands you a mask and tells you to feel the drama. You put it on. It smells like regret and oregano. You've conquered breakfast. You've survived fashion. Now, it's time to face the ultimate test of ancient Greek self-esteem. The gymnasium. You arrive, toga neatly folded, sandals polished, scroll in hand. You're ready to learn. You're ready to sweat. You're ready to... Oh no. Everyone is naked. Welcome to the nude Olympics. You blink. You squint. You panic. There are philosophers doing squats, poets doing lunges. A man named Demetrius is doing jumping jacks while reciting Homer. All of them are gloriously, unapologetically unclothed. You clutch your scroll like a security blanket. A trainer approaches and gently informs you that clothing is a barrier to truth. You nod. You do not understand. Physical education, existential edition. You're assigned a workout partner named Thrasymachus. He's 72, has abs carved by the gods, and believes push-ups are a metaphor for democracy. You do one push-up. You cry a little. Thrasymachus pats your back and says, "The body is a temple. Yours is under renovation." You thank him. You hate him. Bathing, but make it awkward. After your workout, you're herded toward the communal bath. It's a marble room filled with steam, gossip, and the sound of someone singing off-key about olives. You try to blend in. You fail. A man named Cleon offers you olive oil and begins massaging your shoulders while discussing the Peloponnesian War. You're too slippery to escape. You learn more about Sparta than you ever wanted. Intellectual flexing. You sit in the corner, wrapped in a towel and shame. A group of scholars debate whether the soul can do pull-ups. One insists that Plato's theory of forms applies to biceps. Another claims that Socrates invented CrossFit. You offer a timid opinion. They nod respectfully, then challenge you to a foot race. You lose. Badly, you arrive at the entrance to the underworld, guided by a man named Charon, who looks like he hasn't slept since the Bronze Age. He demands a coin. You offer a fig. He sighs and lets you in anyway, muttering something about inflation. The river crossing. Now, with extra existential dread, you board a rickety boat and drift across the river Styx. The water is dark, mysterious, and smells faintly of unresolved guilt. Charon rows in silence. You try to make small talk. He glares. You stop. Halfway across, you spot a soul trying to swim back. Charon bonks him with an oar. You pretend not to notice. Cerberus. The three-headed gatekeeper of mild inconvenience. At the shore, you're greeted by Cerberus, the legendary three-headed dog. One head growls, one head yawns. The third asks if you've filled out Form 42B, Declaration of Mortal Intent. You haven't. You're handed a scroll and a quill. The ink smells like despair. You fill it out, while Cerberus licks your sandal. Welcome to the Department of Eternal Affairs. Inside the underworld, everything is surprisingly administrative. Souls shuffle through lines. A spirit named Euphemia complains about the wait time. Another insists he was misfiled under heroic death when it was clearly accidental goat stampede. You're directed to a kiosk where a shade named Gregor helps you find your afterlife assignment. You're placed in mildly confused limbo. You ask what that means. He shrugs and hands you a brochure. Philosophers in Purgatory. You wander past a courtyard where ancient thinkers debate whether the afterlife is metaphorical. One insists it's a dream. Another claims it's a tax bracket. A third just keeps shouting, Plato was a fraud, while juggling skulls. You sit down. You listen. You fall asleep mid-monologue. No one notices. You arrive at Delphi, the spiritual Wi-Fi hotspot of ancient Greece. The air is thick with mystery, sandal sweat, and the unmistakable scent of burning herbs. You're here to consult the oracle, seeker of truth, dispenser of riddles, and part-time drama queen. The ascent to ambiguity. You climb the sacred path, dodging pilgrims, goats, and one man loudly arguing with a statue. At the top, a priest greets you with a solemn nod and a scroll titled, How to Interpret Your Doom. You ask if it comes in a beginner version. He laughs. You cry. Meet Pythia, the human smoke detector. Inside the temple, you meet Pythia, the oracle herself. She's seated on a tripod, surrounded by smoke, muttering in hexameter and occasionally giggling. You're not sure if she's channeling Apollo or just vibing. You ask your question, will I find success in life? She inhales deeply, eyes roll back, and she declares, the olive shall bloom, but beware the goat with ambition. You nod solemnly. You have no idea what that means. Interpretive chaos. A priest offers to translate the prophecy for a small fee and a jar of honey. You pay. He says it means you'll succeed, unless you trust someone named Gregor. You don't know a Gregor. You now fear all Gregors. Another priest insists it's about investing in amphora futures. A third says it's a metaphor for inner peace. A fourth just shrugs and offers you a fig. You eat the fig. It's dry. You feel enlightened. Rituals, riddles, and regret. You're invited to participate in a purification ritual. It involves chanting, olive oil, and pretending to understand metaphors. You chant. You slip on the oil. You knock over a sacred urn. The priests gasp. Pythia laughs. You're now spiritually clumsy. You arrive in Olympia, the ancient Greek version of a sports complex, minus the protein shakes, and plus a lot more nudity. The crowd is electric. The air smells like ambition, roasted chickpeas, and the faint panic of someone realizing they forgot their javelin. You're here to witness the Olympic Games, a sacred celebration of athleticism, honor, and extremely questionable footwear. Opening ceremony. Now, with extra drama, the games begin with a procession of athletes, priests, and one goat who wandered in by accident. Trumpets blare. Someone shouts, for Zeus, and immediately trips over a discus. A herald announces the events, running, wrestling, chariot racing, and something called pancration. which appears to be a mix of MMA and emotional trauma. You cheer politely. You don't know what's happening. You suspect no one does. The sprint. Sandals optional. Shame guaranteed. The first event is the stadium race, a short sprint across a dusty track. The athletes line up, muscles glistening, eyes focused. You notice they're all naked. You pretend not to notice. The race begins. Sandals fly. Dust clouds rise. One man trips, rolls dramatically, and insists it was a philosophical stumble. He's carried off by a chorus of flute players, wrestling, hugging, but angry. Next up, wrestling. Two competitors circle each other like confused cats. They grapple, grunt, and occasionally pause to insult each other's lineage. The crowd roars. You eat a fig. You feel emotionally bruised. One wrestler wins by inventing a move called the Athenian pretzel. The loser weeps. The goat cheers. Chariot racing. Chaos on wheels. The chariot race begins with a dramatic trumpet blast and ends with 3 crashes, 1 accidental marriage proposal, and a man named Thales being dragged for 20 meters while shouting, "I regret everything." You clap. You're not sure who won. You suspect the goat. Philosophers in the bleachers. In the stands, a group of thinkers debate whether athletic excellence is a metaphor for the soul's journey. One insists that running is symbolic of escaping ignorance. Another claims discus throwing represents the futility of ambition. A third just keeps yelling, "Nice calves," at passing athletes. You move seats. You wake up in Athens with a sore throat, a mild existential crisis, and the lingering suspicion that someone cursed your breakfast figs. Time to visit the local healer, who may or may not be wearing a robe made of herbs and humming to a goat. Diagnosis: a mix of science, superstition, and vibes. Your healer greets you with a solemn nod and immediately asks if you've angered Apollo lately. You say no. He squints. Then it's probably an imbalance of humors. Ah, yes. The 4 humors. Blood. Cheerful. Warm. Slightly sticky. Phlegm. Calm. Cold. Suspiciously gooey. Yellow bile. Fiery. Angry. Smells like regret. Black bile. Moody. Mysterious. Probably writes poetry. Your symptoms are charted on a wax tablet. The goat sneezes. The healer gasps. A sign from the gods. Treatment options. Choose your adventure. You're offered a menu of remedies, including leech therapy, because nothing says healing like letting a blood-sucking worm do the work. Herbal poultices, a fragrant paste of thyme, olive oil, and crushed disappointment. Hot baths and philosophical reflection. You soak in a tub while someone reads Plato aloud. You feel cleaner and slightly more confused. Sneezing rituals. A sneeze to the left means recovery. A sneeze to the right means you owe Zeus an apology. Hippocrates drops in. Suddenly, the legendary physician Hippocrates arrives, sipping chamomile and judging everyone's posture. He insists on rational observation and ethical treatment. The healer nods politely, then resumes chanting to the goat. Hippocrates writes you a prescription. Eat barley, avoid drama, don't wrestle Spartans. You feel better already. Public health, ancient style. You wander through an Athenian bathhouse, where hygiene meets gossip. Citizens soak, scrub, and speculate about who's been cursed lately. One man insists garlic cures heartbreak. Another claims sneezing during a full moon means you're destined for greatness. You sneeze. Everyone applauds. You find yourself in Athens' theater of Dionysus, perched on a stone seat that's somehow both sacred and wildly uncomfortable. Around you, the crowd buzzes with anticipation. Someone's wearing a mask the size of a dinner plate. Someone else is crying preemptively. The play is about to begin. You're not sure if it's a tragedy or a comedy. You suspect it's both. The stage is set and slightly slanted. The actors emerge, masked and robed, speaking in booming voices that echo off the marble. There are no sets, no props, just raw emotion and a chorus of backup singers who occasionally break into interpretive dance. The lead actor begins with a monologue about fate, betrayal, and foot fungus. The audience gasps. You eat a grape. You feel cultured. Tragedy. Everyone's crying, and it's probably your fault. The tragedy unfolds with poetic despair. A noble hero makes one bad decision, usually involving hubris or marrying his mom, and everything spirals. Someone dies. Someone curses the gods. Someone delivers a speech so powerful, it makes a goat faint. You're moved. You're confused. You're 90% sure the chorus just blamed you for the downfall of Thebes. Comedy, satyrs, sass, and political shade. The next play is a comedy, which means everyone's yelling. There's a man dressed as a giant sausage. The chorus is now a group of drunk frogs. The jokes are bawdy, the satire is sharp, and the playwright clearly has beef with the local politicians. You laugh, then wonder if you've just committed treason. Masks and madness. Greek actors wear exaggerated masks to show emotion. Wide eyes for shock, gaping mouths for grief, and one that just looks permanently disappointed. You try one on. You immediately feel dramatic. You deliver a monologue about olives. Someone applauds. Philosophers in the audience. Again, Socrates is here. He's heckling the chorus. Plato is scribbling notes. Aristotle is explaining the plot to a confused goat. You move seats. Again, you awaken on Mount Olympus, surrounded by clouds, chaos, and a suspicious amount of thunder. Zeus is brooding. Hera is plotting. Aphrodite is flirting with a tree. You've entered the divine soap opera, where immortality comes with drama, and every prophecy is basically a spoiler. Meet the dysfunctional divine family. Let's take a quick roll call. Zeus, king of the gods, serial lightning thrower, and father to half of Greece, allegedly. Hera, queen of the gods, patron of marriage, and professional grudge holder. Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and dramatic hair flips. Hades, god of the underworld, introvert with a flair for gothic decor. Athena, goddess of wisdom, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead. No notes. Ares, god of war, emotionally unavailable and constantly yelling. Apollo, god of music, prophecy, and questionable dating choices. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, moonlight, and not putting up with nonsense. You try to introduce yourself. Zeus immediately turns you into a swan. Classic. Family tree or mythological maze. Greek mythology is less family tree and more family tumbleweed. Everyone's related, reincarnated, or cursed by someone they accidentally dated. Cronus eats his children. Zeus marries his sister. Oedipus unknowingly marries his mom. Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection. You start to suspect therapy was invented shortly after. Prophecies. Destiny's spoiler. Alerts. Every hero gets a prophecy. It's usually vague, ominous, and guaranteed to cause anxiety. You will bring ruin to your city. You will slay your father. You will invent democracy, but still get roasted by comedians. You receive your own prophecy. You will eat olives and mildly annoy a goat. You nod solemnly. Monsters, mortals, and mayhem, Greek myths are crawling with creatures. Medusa, hair of snakes, gaze of doom, surprisingly good at charades. Minotaur, half man, half bull, full maze enthusiast. Cyclops, one eye, zero chill. Sirens, singers so good they cause shipwrecks. Basically, ancient Spotify. You battle a hydra by complimenting its scales. It blushes. You survive. Greek homes are simple, but clever. Courtyard, the social hub. Perfect for gossip, goat herding, and impromptu poetry slams. Kitchen, a smoky corner where everything is cooked in olive oil, even the philosophical arguments. Bedroom, straw mattresses, clay lamps, and one very judgmental cat. You try to sit down. The cat blocks your path. You apologize. It doesn't forgive you. Breakfast of philosophers. Morning meals are light. Barley bread, olives, and a splash of wine, because hydration is a modern concept. Your neighbor, a retired hoplite, insists that figs improve memory. You forget his name immediately. A philosopher wanders by and asks if toast is a metaphor for mortality. You nod solemnly and eat another olive. Marketplace mayhem. You stroll through the agora, the bustling heart of Athenian life. It's part farmer's market, part TED Talk, part political rally. Merchants shout about fish, pottery, and limited edition amphorae. Philosophers debate ethics while juggling grapes. Politicians promise reforms and free olives. You buy a tunic, 2 figs, and a scroll titled How to Argue with Your Goat. It's surprisingly useful. Education. Now with extra sass children, attend school to learn reading, writing, music, and how to win arguments with their parents. Lessons include geometry, mostly used to measure fig placement. Poetry, everyone's a critic. Philosophy, taught by a man who hasn't blinked in 3 days. You sit in on a class. The teacher asks, "What is truth?" A student replies, "Not what my dad said about taxes." Applause. Olive oil. The real MVP, olive oil is everywhere. Used for cooking, cleaning, skincare, and bribing minor deities. Stored in amphorae, labeled extra existential, applied liberally before wrestling matches and awkward family dinners. You spill some on your tunic. A stranger nods approvingly. Greek festivals are a glorious mix of religion, theater, food, and mild public nudity. Today's celebration, the Dionysia, honoring the god of wine, drama, and questionable decisions. The streets are draped in garlands. Amphorae overflow with wine. A man dressed as a satyr is reciting poetry to a chicken. You feel festive. You feel confused. You feel like joining in. Dionysus, god of wine, drama, and goat-based entertainment. Dionysus arrives, or at least someone dressed like him, riding a cart pulled by very tired donkeys. He's wearing ivy, holding a goblet, and winking at everyone. The crowd cheers. Someone faints. Someone else proposes marriage to a statue. You raise your cup. Dionysus raises his. The statue declines politely. Theater, but make it competitive. The highlight of the Dionysia is the dramatic competition. Tragedies. 3 plays in a row, where everyone dies, cries, or curses fate. Comedies. 1 play where someone wears a sausage costume and insults politicians. Satyr plays. Half-naked chaos with flute solos and goat masks. You vote for the comedy. The tragedy wins. The sausage actor weeps. The goat parade. Yes, really, a procession of goats marches through the agora, symbolizing fertility, sacrifice, and the ancient Greek belief that goats are inherently festive. One goat wears a laurel crown, another is inexplicably wearing sandals. You try to pet one, it recites a line from Euripides. You apologize, dancing, drinking, and debating. As the sun sets, the real party begins. Citizens dance in circles, waving branches and shouting philosophical slogans. Wine flows like water, except tastier and more likely to cause interpretive dance. A group of elders debates whether joy is a virtue or a distraction. One falls asleep mid-argument. You join a conga line led by a man dressed as a grape. You feel alive. You feel sticky. You wake up to the sound of war horns and someone aggressively polishing a helmet. The city-state is mobilizing. You're handed a spear, a shield, and a tunic that smells like fear and olive oil. You ask what's happening. A soldier shouts, "We march at dawn." It's already noon. The hoplite starter pack. As a newly conscripted hoplite, citizen soldier, you're expected to carry a shield the size of a dinner table, wield a spear that doubles as a walking hazard, wear a helmet that blocks peripheral vision and most rational thought, march in phalanx formation, which is basically synchronized stomping with occasional stabbing. You try to lift your gear. Your knees file a formal complaint. Strategy, but make it shouty. Greek warfare isn't just brute force. It's organized chaos with a side of yelling. Generals shout orders. Philosophers shout counter orders. A goat wanders through the ranks wearing a helmet. No one questions it. Your commander explains the plan. We charge, we shout, we don't die. Any questions? You raise your hand. He ignores you. The battle begins. Poorly, you march onto the field. Dust swirls. Shields clash. Someone drops their spear and pretends it was intentional. You trip over a rock and accidentally invent a new formation called the Athenian collapse. The enemy approaches. You brace yourself. You shout something vaguely heroic. It comes out as, "I miss figs." Mid-battle snack break. After a brief skirmish, both sides pause for hydration and existential reflection. You sip watered-down wine and discuss the ethics of a stabbing with a man named Nikos, who once studied poetry but now throws javelins for a living. He asks if war is just theater, with worse costumes. You nod. He offers you a fig. You accept. The goat returns. Just as the battle resumes, the helmeted goat charges across the field, disrupting formations and morale. Both sides stop fighting to admire its technique. Someone declares it the true victor. You agree. You wake up to chanting, smoke, and a priest waving a chicken leg at the sky. It's a holy day, which in ancient Greece means no work, lots of wine, and a strong chance of divine interference. Meet the pantheon, like a dysfunctional family reunion, but immortal. The Greek gods aren't distant, serene beings. They're dramatic, emotional, and constantly meddling. Highlights include Zeus, king of the gods, serial lightning thrower, and part-time swan. Hera, queen of the gods, patron of marriage, and full-time grudge holder. Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and passive-aggressive wave placement. Athena, goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and owls with attitude. Dionysus, god of wine, parties, and questionable decisions. You light a candle to Athena. It immediately goes out. You take the hint. Sacrifices, the original divine delivery service. To please the gods, Greeks offer animals, sheep, goats, and the occasional unlucky chicken. Food, figs, honey cakes, and wine, because even immortals love snacks. Vows. If you help me win this battle, I'll build you a temple. Spoiler, you lose the battle. The temple becomes a very fancy chicken coop. You're asked to help with a sacrifice. You accidentally offer your lunch. The priest says it's acceptable. Oracles. Ancient Greece's customer support. Hotline. Need divine advice? Visit an oracle. The most famous is at Delphi, where the priestess sits on a tripod, inhales volcanic fumes, and delivers cryptic wisdom like, "The eagle flies east, but the goat dreams west." You nod solemnly. You have no idea what it means, but it sounds important. Rituals. Smoke, chanting, and trying not to trip. Over the altar, Greek rituals are theatrical. Incense smells like wisdom and mild asthma. Chanting, rhythmic, mysterious, and occasionally off-key. Processions. Long walks in uncomfortable sandals while holding symbolic fruit. You join a procession. You drop your fig. A child picks it up and declares it sacred. You let them have it. You wake up to the smell of fresh barley bread and the distant sound of someone arguing about philosophy with a goat. It's a regular day in the Polis, which means errands, eavesdropping, and existential dread in moderation. Home sweet, stone, home. Your house is modest, made of sun-baked bricks and optimism. It features a courtyard for lounging and judging neighbors, a kitchen with exactly 3 ingredients: olive oil, olives, and regret, a bedroom with a straw mattress, and a cat who refuses to leave. You step outside and immediately trip over a child reenacting the Battle of Marathon with a stick and a fig. The Agora, ancient Greece's mall, market, and gossip hub. The Agora is buzzing. You hear a merchant shouting, "Fresh fish, caught this morning," still emotionally unstable. A philosopher muttering, "What is truth?" while stealing grapes. A woman loudly accusing her neighbor of stealing her amphora. The amphora is on her own head. You buy some bread. It's slightly burnt, but spiritually fulfilling. Baths, where cleanliness meets conspiracy. Public baths are the place to scrub off the dust of democracy, discuss politics while awkwardly avoiding eye contact, accidentally overhear a plot to overthrow the local magistrate. You enter the bathhouse. A man named Thanos offers you a sponge and a theory about the moon being jealous of the sun. You nod. The sponge is surprisingly effective. Fashion, tunics, togas, and occasional wardrobe malfunctions. You wear a tunic cinched with a belt that's doing its best. Fashion tips include white, respectable citizen, purple, suspiciously wealthy, or just showing off. No tunic, either a philosopher or someone who lost a bet. You spot a man wearing 2 togas and quoting Homer. He's either enlightened or deeply confused. You join the crowd at the amphitheater where tragedies make you cry about fate, hubris, and that one time Oedipus didn't ask enough questions. Comedies roast politicians, philosophers, and the guy who sells bad olives. Masks are worn by all actors because emotions are best expressed with exaggerated eyebrows. You laugh, you cry, you wonder if the chorus is judging your sandals. They are. Music and dance. When words fail, interpretive twirling begins. After the play, musicians take the stage. You hear a flute solo that sounds like a bird having an existential crisis, a drum beat that makes your feet move against their will, a dancer twirling in circles, possibly to summon a god or just to show off. You clap politely. The dancer bows dramatically and falls into a bush. Bedtime in the polis. The stars blink above Athens. The agora quiets. The goat finally removes its helmet. You return home, full of stories, figs, and philosophical confusion. You lie on your straw mattress, replaying the day. You marched in a phalanx. You sacrificed your lunch to Zeus. You bathed with a man who believes the moon is jealous. You watched a tragedy about a man who married his mom. You clapped for a dancer who may or may not be possessed. And through it all, you were brave, curious, and slightly dusty, whispered by the chorus of history. So close your eyes. Let the olive-scented breeze carry you to dreams of marble temples and fig-filled feasts. The gods are quiet now. The philosophers are snoring. Even the goat has curled up beside the amphora. Tomorrow, the stories will wait, but tonight, you rest, wrapped in the warm toga of time, lulled by the lullaby of lyres, and gently rocked to sleep by the cradle of history. Good night, traveler of tales. The past is proud of you,